Hello, my name is Adam and I review things, mostly movies and TV series, but also I do this series called True Crime Tuesday where I review lately books and lately books by a man named Ryan Green who has several collections of true crime books. Today's book that I'm reviewing is No Place for the Weak, a true story of deviance, torture, and social cleansing. And it's all about an event called the Snowtown Murders. And these murders were led by a man named John Justin Bunting. So Bunting had been abused as a child, and he, by some older relations of a friend of his, and this obviously traumatized him. And later in life, he fell into a sort of relationship, but I mean, not like a sexual relationship by any stretch of the imagination, but a relationship with an older man who had neo Nazi ideology and also believed all homosexuals were pedophiles. And they would go hunting for pedophiles because the John would like be a bait, and then some guy would come along and John would proposition the guy, and then they would beat up the guy. So obviously those guys were not great. But later, John started this path to being some kind of engineer, but he got a job at an abattoir, and he started this mission to rid the world of pedophiles. And I think the book is really, really good because it shows how people will accept really horrible actions if they believe that, the reason for doing the horrible actions was justified. And was it justified? No, because most of his victims were not pedophiles. Um, he got this group of people around him who were murdering people, and I'm just going to give you a list, not of the people who uh, who did it, because I don't want to give them any other more fame. So we have Clinton, Douglas, Teresa, who was just somebody who was friends with this group, and he didn't really like Bunting, and he made a comment one day, so they murdered him and they said that he was a pedophile. Ray Allen Peter Davies, he was a guy who was mentally disabled and he was living on benefits, and he would come out of his trailer where he was living naked all of the time, and some children saw him one day, and so that was enough that he was a pedophile and they killed him. Susan Allen, no one was convicted of this death, but she was 47 years old, so not that old. She died and she had a relationship with Bunting, and so not a pedophile. But they took all of her money, they took Ray's money, and I think that they took Clinton's money as well. Um, Michelle Gardner was 19 and transgender, and that's why she was murdered. Uh, Vanessa Lane, this is the one person who was a pedophile, and he was, well, in the Wikipedia article, it's difficult because I don't think that these people had consistent gender identities, especially Vanessa Lane. She was not always dressing as a woman. She sometimes dressed as a man. But anyway, she was murdered and she was actually convicted of being a pedophile. But she wasn't the first person to be murdered. Other people were murdered who weren't pedophiles. So out of how many people? One, two, three, four, five. 5 people they've murdered so far, one pedophile. Um, Thomas Eugenio Trevelyan. Um, so basically, he thought that he was a soldier, and he had a relationship with um, Vanessa Lane, and he was used to kill her. But then he was also mentally unwell, and he was attacking dogs, and so the cabal of murderers decided that they would kill him as well. And then uh, another person, so Thomas was a schizophrenic, another schizophrenic, Gavin Allen Porter. So basically, he was a drug addict as well, and he was just murdered for being a drug addict. So we have one, two, three, four, five, six, 7 people killed, one pedophile. I mean, I'm laughing, but it's not funny. Then we have Troy Yoda, and this is where it's a little bit, we don't know actually, because Bunting created this environment where everybody that you don't like is a pedophile. So this was one of the cabal's stepbrothers, and he was accused of molesting the guy when he was younger. But he was killed when he was 21, and yeah. Then we had uh, then we had Frederick Robert Brooks, who was accused of feeling up little girls. No evidence. Uh, Gary O'Dwyer, he was mentally and physically disabled. Bunting called him a fag, so of course he deserved to die. Elizabeth Hayden, who was one of the cabal's wives, she knew too much, so she deserved to die. And David Johnson was one of the cabal's step brothers, and he was just cleanly, right? He was fastidious with his cleanliness and appearance, and of course that made him a fag, so he deserved to die. Sorry for the language, but it's just horrible. It's horrible, 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 and it shows the depths that people will go to when they believe in some kind of mission. But that's the crazy part, is like, okay, Bunting said that he had a mission to rid the world of pedophiles, and there's only one person who was a convicted pedophile on that list of about 10 people they murdered, and most of the people that they murdered, they took the benefits that the government was giving. So basically, this was a crime that was financially motivated, really. And it was financially motivated for them. They were living really well. And they kind of convinced themselves that it was because of this crusade. And, you know, they convinced themselves that 9 innocent people had to die to kill one pedophile. And that's not even what they were doing, right? Because they were killing people who Bunting didn't like, basically. Yeah, and they forced these people to have confessions, and they tortured them, and they were renting an abandoned bank, and they put them in barrels to, and this is, so I think people, even now, among certain people in Australia and the world, they think that Bunting was a great hero. He's like such a visionary in like murdering these pedophiles. And when he was convicted, he was like, there were pedophiles running about and the police weren't doing anything. And it's like, if you think that somebody is really a pedophile and you have evidence of this fact, or even suspicion of the fact, you should go to the police, right? They never went to the police with any of that. That's what I found interesting. Because if they had gone to the police and the police investigated and nothing happened, even though there was evidence, then maybe you would have a point. And if you hadn't financially benefited from the victims, that also would that also makes your argument less strong about that. And yeah, I wanted to bring this point up because he was a very charismatic guy, but ultimately not a very smart guy. Because they put the people in the barrel because they thought the acid would dissolve them, but he didn't know enough about chemistry. The acid that they put in the barrels actually pickled all of the victims. A horrible thing to say, but the victims were preserved. So when the police came and they discovered these bodies, they were like, yes, that's a lot of evidence. Yeah. So the book, I think Green, I've been a bit critical about the last few books that I've read of Green's because they were about people who were legitimately mentally disturbed, and another two of his books were about people who there's not a lot of historical record about what they did. So these crimes happened in the 90s in Australia, so they're really, really well documented. So Green is able to understand Bunting's motivation and the motivations of the people in that circle, and he does a very good job of showing you how messy it really was, and how, despite the fact that they said that they were on this mission to rid the world of pedophiles, they were just enjoying killing people. And you don't want people who enjoy killing people to be out and free in society, because that's dangerous. All right, I am not on the mission to kill pedophiles. I wish pedophiles nothing but the worst, but they should be in jail, right? The legal system. But I'm on a mission to be the most prolific reviewer of all time. So if you like my reviews, please leave a comment in the video, like and subscribe. Obviously, sometimes I talk about more difficult topics, so this video is not going to be monetized. So if you want to support me, check out the Patreon. It's a kind of unique take on it in the description of this video. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.